The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the webinar today. My name is Jan Smith. I'm the Vice President over Implementation with Ron Turley Associates, and I'll be presenting the webinar today, Fleet Control Secrets to Success. A couple of business items before we get started today. If you are listening through your computer and you don't have a microphone, and you would like to participate in the question and answer time at the end of the seminar or the webinar, then you can go to the audio on your desktop there and click the telephone option, and it does have a number you can call to participate if you don't have a microphone. If you're listening, you should hear through the speakers at a normal pace, but without the microphone you won't be able to communicate with me. We are recording this today, and our format here is that we'll go through the webinar, present the secrets to success, and then at the end of the webinar we'll have an question and answer period where you're able to ask questions, and we have staff online with us to help answer those questions, and I'll be answering those questions also. Now let's go ahead and get started today. You'll see in front of you the screen that says Fleet Control Secrets to Success. On there I've placed a little statement there. The greatest fleet managers take advantage of effective best practices and all of the industry knowledge and technology available in order to ensure a successful operation. What you'll find throughout this great country with the many, many wonderful fleets and great fleets we have, that those fleets who have found success have certain secrets that they have learned throughout the process. Many times it's a time where they try to find out and test things and then evaluate that and then change it and improve it. But finding those secrets to success help them become those great fleets they are. Today I want to share with you a few of those things that we feel will help you in finding success for your fleet. One of the things that will help you run a better, smarter, more efficient fleet, regardless of the size, there are many opportunities out there to control costs, reduce expenses, without compromising on service, quality, or reliability. It's finding these opportunities within your operation and taking advantage of them that makes the difference between operating an efficient, productive fleet and an unpredictable, expensive one. Where do these opportunities exist? Well, we find those in the main areas of your operation: fuel management, tire management, parts inventory management, your PM tracking program management, warranty tracking and the recovery of those warranties, your shop and mechanic management, work order management, reporting, and training. And these are the areas that we're going to discuss today and talk about some of those secrets to success you'll find in each of these areas. Let's start with fueling and the best practices in fueling. Fueling is the highest cost in any fleet operation. Even with fueling prices down, still it's a major portion of your budget. And so it's important, and no, it's actually critical that you track the fueling consumption of your fleet. Knowing how much fuel is being consumed and which assets are performing at their mile per gallon potential is the key to understanding where improvement is needed. Assets that are not performing well are costing too much in fuel usage and other areas that you'll find throughout your fleet. The key is to identify and correct those problem areas in fuel consumption. Years ago in teaching with Ron Turley, one of the things that Ron would say in our time where we taught together, he would say he would go into a fleet and he would find the 4 worst vehicles in the fleet for fuel cost, high mile per gallon or low mile per gallon, and he could guarantee that if he brought those vehicles in, and he would bring those vehicles in, they would have a mechanical issue for causing that low mile per gallon. So in your fleets, one of the secrets is to find those vehicles, identify those pieces of equipment, those assets that are costing you, are running at their lowest mile per gallon, bring those in and correct the problems. We'll talk more about that and how that can happen as we get into the webinar. Fuel controllers, interfacing to tracking software to update mileage and fuel. One of the best ways that you can control your fuel is to have some type of a fueling system. There are many of them out there, and they do different things. Some use chips, some use cards. Some of the newer ones are SQL interfaced. But having some type of a fueling system is a key to keeping track and controlling and managing your fuel. Plus the fact that with these systems, you can interface to tracking software, some type of fleet maintenance software, to update your mileage and fuel, which is going to boost your PM program and tell you, identify for you, just as we talked about in the early bullet point, the vehicles that are giving you the worst mile per gallon. Many fleets today utilize GPS systems. With GPS systems, they can pull off engine hours, they can pull off mileage, they can pull off some of these things here that can help them in tracking how far a vehicle travels, where it goes, what it does. And these systems can also be interfaced into software to help reporting and identifying those vehicles with issues. Another important part of best practice for fueling is driver training. As I talk about later, training is always the best return on your investment. So drivers who are heavy on the foot, who are stop-and-go drivers, by training these drivers and helping these drivers and understanding, you can improve your fuel practices and drop your costs and control more of your fuel costs than with drivers who are just running around expending excess fuel. So driver training. This is something that tracking software can tell you. It'll not only point out your vehicles that are performing the worst, but it will also point out your drivers who have issues too. So driver training in these areas. Fuel compliance and reporting. Many states and the EPA want you to track the fuel, want you to see what's going on with your systems, how much fuel is being spilled on the ground, how much is leaking. The biggest thing you can do if you're not tracking fuel is assess the financial impact of not managing that fuel. Being the highest cost in your operation, this is something you need to pay attention to. This is something where you need to analyze the statistics, find the vehicles, correct the problems. Next, tire tracking and the best practices. Tires are the second highest cost in a fleet operation. Many fleets don't track tires because they don't have the resources to do that. But this is indeed the second highest cost in a fleet, and I'll explain why. By tracking tires and putting in a process to track the costs, you can increase savings by 5% overall. Now, if you have 75 vehicles, if you have 100 vehicles, just think, calculate the numbers in your head, what you could save if you were saving 5% more by tracking your tires. Knowing the tire costs and which tires are giving you the best life and performance is critical to your tire management. You can compare the cost per mile by tire size and manufacturer. If you don't know this and you're just buying tires, you just as well be throwing money out the door, because without knowing what your tires are costing you and which ones are giving you the best mileage and which manufacturer is giving you the best setup on that, you're losing money. Also, by tracking tires, you can produce replacement projection reports to assist in budgeting. Each year when you put out a budget, one of the things that you have to calculate for is how many tires you're going to need to be replaced during that year. with a tracking or tracking software or putting a process in place, you'll know these kind of figures that will help in the budgeting. Tires that are unperforming can cost time, money for unnecessary breakdowns. Now, the manager who has a problem with tires going flat can fix the tires. A manager who wants to correct that problem might put a process in place where tires are PM'd. But the best manager will go and find the vehicles that have the most tire flats. We'll go out and see why those vehicles are getting the flat tires and correct that problem. Rather than throwing money and time and man hours at the problem, failure analysis is your best friend when it comes to tires as well as parts and other parts of your system. Proper tire pressure. Coming from the Department of Energy, proper tire pressure can increase a vehicle's fuel mileage by 3%. Now, that may not seem much, but again, 3% over 50, 75, 100, 150, 300, 1,000 vehicles, that could account for a lot of cost and a lot of savings. On the other end, just 5 pounds of pressure below what it should be equals 1 gallon of fuel for every 100 miles. Not much when you think about that, except when you multiply that by the number of vehicles. And if you have a fleet that travels 3 million miles a year, that's a lot of cost. Alignment. Alignment is an area that you may not even be looking at, but alignment is critical to tire wear. Here's a couple things that came right from Mr. Ron Turley himself. For every ½ inch out of alignment, the tire is dragged sideways 28 feet each mile. For every 1/2 inch out of alignment, the tire is dragged sideways 28 feet each mile. And for those of you who are running dualies, mismatched tires by even 1/2 of an inch, one tire being even a ½ inch shorter than the other, causes that tire to travel 63 feet less per mile. If that tire is traveling 63 feet less than the tire right next to it, it's causing excessive wear and wasting fuel. So mismatched tires and alignment affect tires in excessive ways. Definitely something to look at if you're looking for success in managing your tires. The next area that we want to look at right now is parts management. Best practices for parts management. We'll start off with the initial thing, inventory control. 90% of all fleets have trouble controlling parts inventory. That means many of you out there have the same issue, and maybe that's why you're here today. Knowing what parts you have in inventory and the value is critical, since your parts room is the most expensive floor space you have in your shop, because all that space does is store parts. So by decreasing the inventory, you can increase cash flow. Simply by decreasing in on-hand inventory is a 5 to 10% savings. Now it could be even better than that. We had a user come to conference from the Chicago area, and they were tasked with decreasing their on-hand inventory by, I believe, $1 million, if I remember correctly. Once they got looking at it and studying it and knowing what parts they had in inventory, knowing their turnover ratio, identifying those parts that weren't being used, they not only decreased their inventory by over $1 million, they went to $2 million. It's there, it's in your shop. As you walk around and look at it, you'll see those things that have dust. Those things have been sitting around for years. That is costing you space expensive space in your parts room. The next thing that is overlooked by many fleets is turnover ratio. Turnover ratio should be something that you're able to report on. It should be something either in your fleet maintenance software, something that you should be aware of. This is the amount of times that you go through your inventory in a year. Knowing your inventory turnover ratio helps identify which parts are not moving, which parts are sitting on the shelf. You should be looking to turn over your inventory 3 to 5 times per year. If it's not, you can guarantee that you have slow-moving parts and parts that are on the shelf that you can decrease and save cash by either selling these back to the vendor. Many vendors will buy them back from you, or as you sell off that type of vehicle, those bus fleets we have, as you sell off those types of buses, you can also include those parts at a cost to help increase cash flow and decrease your on-hand inventory. Eliminating non-used and obsolete parts allows for cost management in your inventory. A cleaner shop, a cleaner parts. The next thing is economic order quantity. Automating a min-max. Many software programs out there have this built into it to where it will track your inventory and your usage and will calculate those min-max or reorder points and reorder quantities for you based on your usage. Basically, this means if you're only using 3 per month, there's no reason to keep 15 on the shelf, which enables your turnover ratio to increase. Along with that, auto-create requisitions. As parts are charged out onto a work order, the inventory is relieved and requisitions are created automatically to know exactly what you need to reorder. This will allow you to keep required parts on the shelf and decrease downtime. So having an economic ordering system can help decrease the downtime in your shop, vehicles waiting for parts to come in. Another part of parts management, best practices, the use of part kits. Part kits are parts that are grouped together. They don't have to be together in a box. They don't have to be together in a bag. They don't have to be together on a shelf. They don't even have to be in your parts room. But they are parts that you group together in a kit, and they can be assigned to the vehicle. So when that vehicle comes due for preventive maintenance or whatever it is, tune-ups, anything that you use part kits for, the mechanic knows exactly what parts are needed and if they're in stock or not and where to find them. This also makes for an easy, quick post to the work order, because rather than posting 14 items or 12 items, you post 1 item. Part kits are time savings from the management of parts. Warranty tracking. Warranty tracking is an area that can pay for itself many times over. If you're using some type of software, this will pay for the software. But there are some key things that need to happen. Warranty tracking needs to have alerts when parts are replaced on the work order that they're under warranty. If you go out to your stack of batteries out back and you have batteries sitting out there that haven't been tagged and put on a return for credit, then that is money that is going out the door. The reason that happens is that nobody remembers who put that part or that specifically that battery on 12 months ago, 24 months ago. That's 2 years. Most of us can't remember what we had for breakfast yesterday. But with a warranty tracking program in place, these kinds of things are remembered. They're brought to the forefront, and money is saved. Lots and lots of money A few years back at one of our conferences, we had a large fleet come from Canada. And this is something they weren't tracking. It wasn't something that was on their scope of what was important. So during a lunch break, they got together and they went in and looked at their system. And they came back after lunch and they said that their calculations, they had left $1.2 million on the table in warranty tracking. That is a lot of savings. We have a lot of success stories for fleets who have, by using a warranty tracking process, have saved money. There was one fleet who told me a story that they even went back to the manufacturer and showed them where their brake item was failing. They were paid $32,000 for that. So warranty tracking is critical to success in fleet control. But there are some other pieces to that too. Along with warranty tracking, there's also recovery. Many times we talk about warranty tracking, but we don't talk about recovery. Without recovery, the second part of that is completely missing. With a warranty tracking process, you must have some type of a creation of a vendor claim form so that when you go back to the vendor, you have the information needed. Anytime you take an item back to your vendor, the first thing they want to know is the invoice number. They want to see when it was purchased. With the vendor claim form, you have that capability to have all that information, when it was purchased, the invoice number, when it went on the vehicle, the work order number, everything that goes along with that, so that when that goes to that vendor, all the information is completed without it having to be handwritten, so that the vendor can quickly process that claim form to get your money back. The next important part of that, along with the vendor claim form, is claims aging. Now with claims aging, there should be three types of aging for your claims. One is when it's pending. Those claims that come off from a work order and yet are known but are not yet submitted. They're aged, so you know, and you can look at any one point and have control over that to say, these are those claims that have not been submitted. We need to get those in. The next is the aging of a submitted claim. Once it goes to the vendor, then we start aging that to find out how long it takes to get back. Once it comes back, it should always also have a quick, easy way to record the information, the claim ID, the check number, and the cost. And then, as we talk about later in the work orders, it should also be able to be posted quickly and easily, the credit back to that vehicle. The last part of parts management that we'll talk about here is barcoding. Barcoding has been the standard since about 1972. Some even before that. The first item that was purchased with a barcode was a stick of Wrigley's gum or a package of Wrigley's gum. But barcoding is common practice today. Your parts come with barcodes on them. A barcoding system allows you to quickly count and account for those parts. It gives you a quick, easy way to relieve inventory, a quick and easy way to do your cycle counts and year-end counts. It is an overall time saver. We have one fleet who reported that by using a barcode reader to do their year-end inventory, saved up to 80 man-hours. That's labor cost. And the one way you can decrease labor cost is to decrease labor. That fleet did it in inventory by saving 2 weeks of man-hours. A barcoding program that's there can help you control the costs, control the parts, and along with that, you may even have other ways to barcode things like parts, mechanics. Vehicles. Anything you have out there, you can create a barcode for. Next, I want to talk about preventive maintenance best practices. Now, as we talk about preventive maintenance, there are some things we need to discuss in the beginning. Why do preventive maintenance? First off, to avoid legal liability. It is the #1 reason for PM. Anytime you're watching the news and you see a bus, a train, an airplane, anything that you see that has been in some type of an accident or or catastrophe or anything, the first thing that is questioned when we look at the records is, has that piece of equipment, has that asset been maintained? If a poorly maintained vehicle failure causes injury or death, the cost can be catastrophic to your operation. It might even be the end of business for you. But if we step back away from that, simply failing state inspections can cause loss of license to operate and even bankruptcy. This happened to a fleet in California. They had failed their bid inspection twice. Once they failed it a third time, they were about to lose their license. The only way they kept that was that they were able to prove that they weren't hauling hazardous waste. Otherwise, they would have been bankrupt. So failing state inspections, causing injury, 2 reasons to do PM. Now, on the fleet side, how does it help in our operation? Well, it obviously prolongs the vehicle life. Knowing when routine services are due in the fleet is critical. The stickers on the windows, they work okay, but they're not foolproof. The best way is to have some type of process that alerts you to know when routine services are due. And they can be for anything. PM can be for not just mechanical things, but licensing, permits. How about dielectric testing? At the fleet that I ran, I had a crane and a bucket truck that had to be dielectrically tested. That means they had to be tested to make sure they were safe if they were touched with electricity and working around electricity. No cracks in the boom, things like that. Well, these had to be tested on a regular basis. For me, it was easy to set up as a PM. That way I didn't have to try to remember it. I didn't have to think about it. All that happened was it alerted me when that PM was coming due. I could then call the outside agency and say, hey, I'm going to have my vehicles here a week from next Thursday. They would look at their records and say, that works for us. And I always had a chuckle as I hung up the phone, them thinking, he's a pretty smart guy. When really, all I did was kept it in my PM program to alert me. Where I was also, the state of Utah changed the rules. I had exempt plates. All my cars never had to be licensed. The state of Utah changed the laws and said that I now had to have all my vehicles renew the license, state inspection, and emissions. For me, that was just a PM. Once I put that PM out there and start tracking, I could say, show me all J inspections that are due in this 30 days or in the next 30 days. And I could schedule things in, have them done, have it all taken care of, and the service to those vehicles was never interrupted. PMs done on a consistent basis reduces unscheduled repairs and extends component life. When we think of PMs, we think of vehicles breaking down, but what about the components? What are we doing when we change the oil in the filter? What are we doing when we flush the systems? What are we doing when we check the rear ends, the transmissions, when we rotate the tires? We're extending the component lives on those vehicles. So just not the vehicle, but we're extending the life of each of the components. That saves us in part cost. that saves us in labor hours. That helps control our fleet costs. Improves performance. A good PM program can have a big impact on a fleet's fuel cost. Good PM can reduce costs related to unscheduled downtime by 25%. A well-maintained air filter can increase gas mileage and engine efficiency by up to 10%. As fuel prices go up, that becomes even more critical. 10%. Reduce unexpected failures. Components can be replaced before failure. A tune-up. If we've got a good PM program, a tune-up is a PM. Why wait till the spark plugs have run all the way out? Why wait till those components are worn out? Because once they start to wear down on the second half of their life, or the last fourth of their life, guess what happens to fuel mileage and fuel cost and everything else that happens? The performance of that piece of equipment is dependent on the components that make up its whole. So setting up a tune-up could be a simple PM. That way, it's never shut down unexpectedly. Poor maintenance can reduce the life expectancy of parts and components by up to 30%. How many times have we seen pieces of metal that have been sheared off because they worn out or they weren't lubricated? A simple oil change could save thousands of dollars on an engine. Preventing poor inspections. Breakdowns can almost always be traced back to poor preventive maintenance. One of the things you can do, or several things you can do, you can use a circle inspection. This is something I learned from Mr. Turley himself, is that when a mechanic is doing preventive maintenance on a vehicle, they can see everything in a 3-foot range. So as they're inspecting that, this circle includes this 3-foot range, this circle includes the next 3-foot range, and so forth and so on. Anything that takes 10 minutes or less is a PM'd item. If we look at the brakes and realize the brakes need to be done, that's no longer a PM. The PM is either stopped and the brake job is done, or the brake job is scheduled after the PM is completed. But PM inspections should be finding at least 50% of the repairs that are happening in your shop. A good PM mechanic, a trained PM mechanic, can see things that will need to be taken care of before the next PM. Standardizing your PM. Scheduling alerts. We talked a little bit about this before. Having a process that you schedule PMs to be done at certain time frames and are alerted when those are coming due, so they can be completed ahead of time before the vehicle has to be taken out of service for some other reason. Along with that, templates. Work order templates. Templates that pertain to this type of PM. These can be set up. That way, it's less time to create the work order because we're using a template. I know every time my wife makes a dress, she has a pattern. And that pattern changes depending on what type of dress she's creating. The same with your fleet. You have different vehicles. PM should be set for that type of vehicle. A pickup is different than a sedan. A tractor trailer is different than a D9 Cat. Templates can quickly and easily be set up, so no one has to remember, what it is we do here. We know exactly what it is. It's simply saying, use this template that is assigned to that vehicle for that PM. Along with that template, we have checklists. Checklists are a wonderful, wonderful way to standardize your work. Because if you have a checklist or a task list of everything that needs to be done. It doesn't matter whether Sue does it, whether Sam does it, or Bill does it in the shop, because they're using a checklist, and each time they do it, it's going to be done exactly the same way, because those are the things that they need to do. Checklists, if you don't have a checklist, look to your vendor, look to your automotive, your vehicle provider. Each vehicle comes with an owner's manual, and in that owner's manual it states, this should be done at this time, this should be done at this mileage. That's a checklist. It's a start. You may have other things that you want to add to that, but each time that that template is used on that work order, that checklist, which is assigned to that template for that vehicle, is there all ready for the mechanic to use. Along with that, parts kits. We talked a little bit about this before, but this is where you can control. This is one of those secrets to PM. No one, if we have a part kit assigned, there's no question what parts are needed, where they're located, and if they're in stock or not. Now, the rewards of a sound program, a sound PM program, it stated, Mr. Turley himself, for every 1 hour that is spent on PM, it is estimated that 3 to 8 hours of repair time is saved. You want to decrease your labor? Have a good PM program in place. For every 1 hour that is spent on PM, it is estimated that 3 to 8 hours of repair time is saved. That is the secret to PM success. Ask yourself this: what is the value to your organization to keep a vehicle running for 1 more year? A few conferences back, we had a customer come, and they were in a class, and they stated, by tracking their PM and knowing their vehicle costs and history, they were able to keep a bus running for an extra year. It saved them $80,000 of buying a new bus. Good PM scheduling. Again, right from Mr. Turley's manual. I've had this for some years and used it in my fleet. Good PM scheduling. You'll notice he's broken it up in a pie as to how your operation should work. Again, 50% of your work should be coming off from PM. No breakdowns, no road calls, or minor road calls and minor breakdowns, I suppose, if we accepted that. But 50% of the work should be coming off from that PM inspection. 15% should be PM, other unscheduled road calls, drop-ins, driver's VCRs, and other scheduled work. Scheduled work is always better than unscheduled work. A good PM scheduling program will give you this type, and you can have reports that will show you exactly what percentage of your PM is to your corrective maintenance. Next, I want to talk about warranty tracking. Warranty tracking, as I mentioned before, is critical to increasing the cash flow in your fleet. Knowing which warranties exist in the fleet can greatly assist in controlling costs. Tracking warranties on assets is the easiest way to improve your bottom line. Mechanics should be notified when removing a part from a work order, from a vehicle, that it is under warranty and what location it's coming from. Not paying for warranty work or recouping dollars from parts warranties go to the bottom line of fleet costs. By having a good warranty tracking and recovery, you can recoup up to $300 per asset per year. Many times we have repeat repair work and we're just letting it go when in all actuality there's an issue that needs to be analyzed there. It could be warranty issues. Having a full cycle warranty tracking process can greatly reduce lost warranty dollars. Just as we talked about the battery out on the pile. A warranty tracking program and recovery should track the purchase date, vendor, price, PO, invoice, and work order. Create the warranty claim form. Track which claims are pending. Track the recovery info, and have a one-step process to credit warranty back to the vehicle. If we're not crediting the warranty back to the vehicle, then we're always just kicking our vehicle costs up when that vehicle really is due its credit back on the unused portion of that warranty. Shop and mechanic best practices. Managing mechanics time. Scheduling and accountability. This is the old adage that mechanics do their work when they have to be accountable for it. Tracking how technicians spend their time allows you to gauge shop productivity and identify where improvements are needed. Go out one day in your shop and just look at the different mechanics and see what they're doing. What portion of them are working on their job? What portion of them are getting parts? What portion of them are taking a break? What portion of them are looking for a tool? All these things fall into the category of scheduling and accountability. Decreasing labor decreases labor cost. Only 50% of potential productivity is achieved when it's not measured. Many fleets I talk to, we don't track productivity. Well, how do you know which mechanics are your best mechanics? How do you know who can do the job when it needs to be done? And how do you know who needs to be trained and who can do the training? Mechanics who do well in one area can cross-train to mechanics who don't do well in that area. There's something they know, some type of how the tool function or how to do the job that helps them. And if they can share that with other mechanics, you have a full fleet of mechanics that can do anything. Assign tools in shop base. Mechanics who walk over to get an impact wrench. Why not have each mechanic have their own impact wrench? Assign shop base. Make them responsible for those things. That way they're not having to look and spend time and man hours checking on those things. A manager's time. Delegate responsibilities to the shop foreman. Mechanics who have to ask questions to you all the time should be pushed to someone who can do that because you have many, many other things to do. Designate specific times for salespeople, phone calls, meetings, and training. List the top 5 things that you want to accomplish by importance each day. You'll complete about 15 in a week, but that's over 500 in a year. That's being productive. Reduce the paperless work. Go to a paperless shop, both with your mechanics and with yourself. Resist the status quo. Implement failure analysis. Just like I talked about with the tires. The manager who is the status quo manager, oh, we have flat tires, we'll fix them when they come in. But those mechanics who go the next step, all the way to find out which vehicles get the most flat tires and why they do, those are the managers who are changing and controlling their fleet. They know the secrets. Shop space management. How is your shop space? Too little space? Many times with too little space, there's disorganization. The aisles get filled. Tools are in the wrong place. And people being disorganized cause the lack of productivity. Too much space in your shop? Look at your shop. Run a comparison. Do your mechanics, do your technicians have to walk excessively to get to the parts room, to get to the tool crib? Each of these things increases the effort and results in many expensive lost man hours. Find a balance. Do I need to have a parts room in the middle of my shop or the other end of my shop? Do I need to have a parts closet with those things that we use in those bays, such as PM? Both of these things, if you're controlling them, you found a secret to your success. Work orders best practices. Driver reports. Many times communication between drivers and shops could be as wide as the Mississippi. But with a driver report, you create that communication between drivers and the shop. Now, a driver has confidence the shop is going to take care of things. The shop has confidence that the driver is going to let them know when there's a problem. This communication is a secret to success with your fleet, and having driver's reports that will allow you to know what's going on with the drivers and the shop to be able to use that will bring success. Auto-creating work orders from the driver's reports. Once your shop foreman looks at those driver's reports, to quickly be able to create work orders and schedule that vehicle in. If it's a real issue, a brake problem, it can be taken care of right away, all based on the priority. Easily creating work orders, having the templates as we talked about. Also reason codes and priorities. By using a reason code on your work order, you now know what the reason for that repair is. And using a priority allows your technicians to know and your shop to know which are high on the list to be corrected and which are those that can wait. Capture all costs, parts, labor, tires, shop supplies, everything that you have there. If it's an outside repair order, when that invoice comes back, enter those costs onto the work order. So when you're looking at vehicle costs, you're looking at true costs. With work orders, to be able to relieve inventory right onto the work order and create requisitions automatically and have warranty alerts and claims makes your work orders work smoothly and is a best practice in your shop, because now the communication from the parts to what needs to be ordered to what needs to be sent back to the vendor. I'll tell people when they start up using a system, they should have a shelf that is a return merchandise authorization shelf, so they can start collecting those warranted items. Tag it, put it on the shelf, you know where it goes, you can collect it, get the money back. Paperless shop is a great option. It's the best time-saving tool you have out there, because now everyone's accountable. You could even use this not only in your shop, but for clerks and everyone else. Create the job categories, have them clock on. You now know exactly what they're doing every minute of the day. It's the best way to track productivity, because now you see exactly what the technician is doing. You can compare direct versus indirect hours. If I pay a person for 40 hours, their direct hours working on a vehicle is 32, and they have 6 hours indirect chasing parts or whatever they do, well, that only adds up to 38 hours. By comparing the indirect and direct hours, we can see exactly how our technicians are using their time. We can also, with productivity and other things, we can determine who needs training. Reporting best practices. Reports should be thorough but brief. You should have the ability to view on screen with the print option. It should include all costs, your fuel costs, your tire costs, your parts cost, labor, and cost per mile. If you have multiple reports that you have to collect together and read them, it just doesn't make sense. The secret is to have a reporting tool that will show you all those things on a single report. By date range, think about it. If I knew what it was costing me to run my fleet for the first 6 months of the year, I'd have a pretty good idea what it's going to cost me the last half. Or what about the same quarter next year? By having the correct reporting tool, you have the capability to not spend 3 days coming up with a budget, but spend 3 minutes, 3 clicks, and you can know exactly what it's costing you to run your fleet, not only in a time frame, but also the cost per mile. So you know those vehicles, going back to our initial talk, those vehicles which are your worst performers, it'll show you, and it's all fact. It's nothing you have to make up. If you have all the costs, it's right there. Warranty, repeat failures, and failure analysis. Having a report that will know when specific repairs happened in the past. Repeat repairs or warranty. Knowing that you're doing it again and again over a time frame of 3 months or 6 months, you can now make a decision. What is the problem? Is this an item that we need to look for warranty? Is this an item that we need to put as a PM? Compare the cost analysis for future purchases. I had a fleet that told me that by comparing their cost analysis and having a reporting tool, they could see that when they bought a vehicle, that paying extra for air brakes over hydraulic brakes was, yes, more expensive in the beginning, but over the long haul, it paid off in aces because of the cost that they saved of not having to fix those other type brakes. Compare your cost analysis by looking at your history reports, looking at your cost reports, and see them. Make model year reports, being able to determine the cost escalation of the fleet by year. Had a fleet who ran this for a group of mixer trucks. He found that his 3-year-old mixers we're giving him better cost than his brand new mixers, simply by tracking cost escalation fleet by year. Comparing depreciation value and productivity of a new vehicle versus the older one will allow you to know. One fleet reported that if they kept their vehicles to a certain year, such as 10 years, they could keep it all the way to 13 years because the cost leveled off. This is what your reporting tool should give you. If you don't have a cost analysis for comparing these things, you need to find a better tool for reporting. Key performance indicators. They help measure performance against goals, the goals that you set. Now you have the tools to compare the performance versus the goals. You can evaluate the success of all areas, not just a simple area. How am I doing in parts? What about work orders? What repair am I doing more of? Which repair is costing me the most? Which vehicle is costing me the most? Quickly will show areas that need improvement. This is one of the areas I'll show you on a history report. And again, this is could be any history report, but the thing I like about this is with anything, if I have a reporting tool, I'm seeing the different codes that are out there, the different descriptions of things we've done, and the number of occurrences. The labor hours, labor cost, and parts costs are important, and the total cost. But more importantly, if I'm evaluating my fleet, and I'm running this on a monthly basis, I can see exactly where I'm spending my time. Right now, one that jumps out at me, 75% of my work is done in preventive maintenance. That's beyond that 50% that we talked about. So I need to start looking immediately at maybe extending my PM, running some oil samples, seeing what I can do. One that's concerning to me, the cranking system. What am I doing in cranking system that I'm spending 4.2% and spending $3,500 over this time frame? Cabin sheet metal. I know brakes are going to be high. I know tires are going to be high. But cabin sheet metal, 10% of all repairs. I can now analyze, and by analyzing, I can now tweak my system to find out why. And if I know the why, I can change the future. And that's what it's all about. Training, your best return is on your training. It improves your shop knowledge, improves your quality of work, improves safety habits, tool functions. If I have mechanics who know how to better use tools, then less labor, less cost. It improves attitude, productivity, and shop cleanliness. Training activities should focus on creating job security and job satisfaction. Fleet tracking software. The key to this is when something is measured, it will improve. That's what software is all about. It's measuring what's going on so that you can analyze it and you can improve it. Fleet Manager software is important because it gives fleet managers a wealth of data and metrics to draw from in order to better optimize. The benefits of software are many. Increased employee productivity, less paperwork, reduced carbon footprint, cost control, and more abundant fleet data that you can use. I want to talk about something that I came across here, was written by someone else that said the 5 best practices for a fleet manager. To finish up today, talk about what you can do to help your fleet. Those secrets, putting those secrets to work. Now that you have the tool, learning how to use it. The first thing is track everything. If you're understanding where the money is going, it's the first step in effectively managing it. Accurate and timely information is your greatest weapon. Don't underestimate the power of preventive maintenance. Use it. Breakdowns are your worst enemy. There's a correlation between breakdowns and preventive maintenance. If you're having breakdowns, you need to up your PM. That's the key. It's a balance. Vehicle downtime costs on average $100 per hour. Trim the cost by making smart changes. Trim fuel expenses. Manage parts inventory. Recover those warranties. And know how your shop technicians are spending their time. Just those things we talked about. Open the lines of communication. Develop and implement a company policy. A driver reporting. Make internal communication a habit. A good habit. And never stop improving. Measure, measure, measure the performance. Fine-tune the machine. Automate your internal processes. Paperless shop. Fueling interfaces. Barcoding. All these things that can help you. Look for those areas that need improvement and keep up with the industry standards. Now, I appreciate the time we spent together. I think now we'll open it up for questions. If someone wants to have questions, I will open that up, and you can ask questions.
You see